So we're not going to do a lot with this concept, but there is one question on the online homework that will talk about complementary goods and substitute goods. So the demand for some pairs of goods have a relationship where the quantity demanded for one product depends on the prices for both. So complementary goods are goods that are consumed together, and two goods are complementary if an increase in the price of either decreases demand for both. Okay, so some examples. Cars. The demand for cars are going to depend on both gas prices and the cost of cars. Okay? So if gas prices are really high, more people may take public transportation and not have a need as much for cars. If the cost of cars are really high, then obviously the demand for cars is going to be down, and people may stay with their older cars and not upgrade at the current moment. So that's an example of a complementary good. Another example is printer and printer ink. So both printer ink increasing and the cost of printers increasing is going to impact the demand for either printers or printer ink. And so the demand for printers depends both on the cost of a printer and the ink. The demand for ink depends both on the cost for printers and the cost of ink. So that's examples of complementary goods. Another relationship is substitute goods. So substitute goods are products that satisfy a common want. So they're usually from competitors. So two goods are substitutes if an increase in the price of one increases the demand for the other. So think of Coke and Pepsi. So yes, some people have a strong preference for one or other, but a lot of people will either drink Coke or Pepsi, or in terms of like restaurants, they'll choose either one. And what it comes down to is often like if Pepsi raises its price a lot, then the demand for Coke is going to be higher. If Coke raises its price a lot, then the demand for Pepsi is going to be higher. So that's an example of a substitute good. iPhone and Galaxy series, those are competitors. And so if iPhones are super expensive, then more people might buy Galaxies. It's not the only factor. I know, again, there's loyal customers, but there are people that are willing to do either type of phone. Okay, Nike and Adidas are another one. So they're competitors. And so therefore, if one competitor increases the price, the demand for the other one more likely is to go up. So the homework problem is going to ask a few questions, and then the last question is they're going to say determine if the two products are substitute goods or complementary goods. And so what you have to think about is based on your products, and they have the demand equations in terms of Q1 and Q2, and the P1 and P2 are the independent variables with it. And so what we're thinking about is what is happening to the demand function as P1 and P2 increase. And so if we think about this one, if P1 increases, okay, for either demand equation, P1 increases, then Q1 and Q2 are going to decrease, okay, because I'm subtracting them out. So if P1 is 1, then I'm just subtracting out 5. But if P1 is 2, then 5 times 2 is 10, and I'm subtracting out 10. And so the more it increases, the more I am decreasing the demand functions for these two. And the same thing is for P2, because I'm subtracting out 3 times P2 and 4 times P2. If P2 increases, then Q1 and Q2 will decrease. And so again, when we look at our two types, that is an example of complementary, because two goods are complementary if an increase in the price of either decreases the demand for both. Okay, and so the increase of P1 is going to decrease this demand for both, and the increase of P2 is going to decrease the demand of both. So these are complementary. Now let's look at B. So for B, we have Q1 equals 1,000 minus 5P1 plus 3P2, and Q2 equals 200 plus 3P1 minus 2P2. And this again would be the demand function for our product 1, which is P1, and Q2 is our demand function for product 2. So if we look at this, if we look at kind of doing the opposite, if we have P2 increase for this one, then Q1 is going to increase. And again, Q1 is the demand function for like the P1, and Q2 is the demand function for for P2. So of course, if P1 increases, the demand function, the demand for that product is going to decrease. But we also have this P2 that the demand function depends on. And if that increases, Q1 is going to increase because we're adding it. And if we look at if P1 increases, and we look at the demand function for the other one, Q2 is going to increase because I'm adding 3 times P1. So as P1 goes up, Q2 is also increasing. Of course, as P2 goes up, the demand is going to decrease for that product. So this is an example of substitute goods. Because again, for substitute goods, what it means is if the increase in price of one increases the demand for the other. Okay, so as we increase P2, that is increasing the demand of the other product of P1. And then as we increase P1, that's increasing the demand for other product, P2. Okay. So that's an example of how to determine if something is complementary or substitute goods.